there who had a dream, who felt the need to be inspired about something, who wanted something so badly. It was about going out and getting it, and he was just that kind of guy. And he laughed a lot more than people realized. He told a lot of jokes more than people realized. He'd sting you whenever he could because that was his way. He was a guy that he was a great basketball player. He was a great father. He loved his wife, and that's obviously tremendously. He was a great friend. We were just together on New Year's Eve, and we were supposed to meet again in a few weeks to discuss some things and to just hear the news that he passed away, particularly in this fashion. He's been taking a helicopter for decades, living in Newport Beach and, flying, toward downtown to L.A. to the Staples Center, to and from games all the time for many, many years. He loved being in that helicopter. He certainly was never really concerned about it. And for him to be gone, particularly through these means, is incredibly tragic, and it's sad. And to know that his daughter was on a helicopter with him, it just resonated even that much more profoundly. So obviously it's incredibly sad for me, incredibly sad for the NBA community, and it's just hard to put it in words, to be quite honest with you. That's the best I can do.
Stephen A., Kobe Bryant's been a public figure for, more than 2 decades, as you mentioned. I mean, he took Brandy to high school prom, right? I mean, who got to do that? But Kobe Bryant did that. Then he comes into the NBA with the bravado of a 10-year veteran, even if he didn't have the skills at that time to match it. But then 5 NBA championships, an MVP, 2 gold medals at the Olympics. We've seen Kobe Bryant for quite some time. And from a fan standpoint, if you will, we feel like we do know who Kobe Bryant is, the relentless competitor, the never give up attitude. You mentioned some of the off-court things, his sense of humor. What is it about Kobe Bryant, Stephen A., that most people, frankly, don't know?
Well, I would tell you that, again, I use the word motivational because I think that a lot of times when people look at him and they take some of the words and some of the things that he spewed, they try to attach it to athletics, but he wasn't about that. He was about life. When I spoke at the University of Alabama for Nick Saban last year, Kobe had spoken prior to that, I think a year earlier than that. Anywhere he could go to inspire people to be the best that they can be, that was something that he wanted to do. He didn't want to just do it through his words, however. He wanted to continue to do it through his own work, to show that basketball was just one element of what he was all about. It certainly didn't limit him in any way. He spoke several languages fluently, obviously Italian, Spanish, and of course English. I mean, this guy was highly intellectual. He was a brilliant mind, and he was not shy about letting you know that he was brilliant because he never believed he was. He was on a mission to constantly elevate himself intellectually. That's just the temperament that he had. But he also wanted to be inspirational in that regard. I remember years ago when I had the show, quite frankly, on ESPN2, and people used to talk about me, interviewing people, and they used to bring up folks like Oprah and others. He used to say, damn all of that, not Oprah, Harpo. That was his mentality. Don't think about just being in front of the camera. Think about owning the product. Think about something bigger than what you're thinking about constantly. It's not just about being a reporter. It's about being an author. It's not just about being a basketball player. It's about being a champion. It's not just about being an artist. It's about being an Academy Award winner. These are all things that he had visions of, and it was consistent with who he was from the time that you knew him. Because coming into the NBA, one of the things that had turned others off about him initially, he came into the league talking about how he was going to be as great, if not greater, than Michael Jordan one day. And people used to look at him and say, this dude is off of his rocker. His chest is sticking out just a little bit too much. He needs perspective. And then sure enough, when you watched him work and you saw the commitment that he put in, you realized he wasn't playing. He was dead serious. He would win championships. He would take a week or two off and then show back up a week or two later and start working in the summertime at 5:30 in the morning. This is what he did religiously. When other people were taking vacations, he was studying. When other people were taking breaks, he was working out. That was his entire mentality about anything and everything. And if you were going to be around him and you talked about aspiring to do something, one of the biggest things he would question you about was the work that you were putting in. He would probe, he would interrogate, because he wanted to make sure that you were doing what you said that you wanted to do, that you, if you were truly aspiring to go after what you were aspiring to go after, he wanted to judge what you were doing for yourself to see how seriously he could take that you really meant what you said about really, really going for it. That was his mentality all of the time. And he was that way with teammates. He was that way with executives. He was that way with league officials. He was that way with contemporaries. He certainly was that way with me, along with a bevy of other people that he called friends or called one of his boys or whatever the case may be. That was his mentality. And all of that shaped Black Mamba, the Mamba mentality. You either had to adjust to the program or you didn't want to be around him because he wasn't going to change, because he knew he was right and you were probably wrong if you were against him.
Yeah, that work ethic was notorious for Kobe Bryant. I mean, he would show up to games or before practice, sometimes before shoot around, after going through a full workout and have to go change it to dry clothes just so he could get ready for the practice or the shoot around before the game that night. That's how committed Kobe Bryant was. Steve, stand by, because we're getting more and more reaction from around the league on the death of Kobe Bryant in a helicopter crash outside of Los Angeles around 10 a.m. this morning there in L.A. Alvin Gentry and the Pelicans have a game coming up later this evening. He was asked to give his thoughts on Kobe passing away at the age of 41.
I mean, in no words, really. I mean, I don't know where you could even start. I mean, great competitor, great guy, you know, great father. Just really, really a sad day for the NBA. You know, obviously, thoughts and prayers go with his family, go with the whole Laker organization, really, you know. And, I mean, they've lost, you know, one of the greatest players, but also a guy that's just, you know, his name is synonymous with that franchise. So, you know, it's a tough day, you know, to hear of his passing, and, you know, one of his daughters, you know, it's just a real tragic thing.
Stephen A. Smith still with us here on SportsCenter. Alvin Gentry brought up a good point. Kobe wasn't just a marquee player, Stephen A. He also played for a marquee franchise, and that combination is so much a part of Kobe's legacy as well, because you played for an organization that had Elgin Baylor, had Jerry West, had Magic Johnson, had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, had Shaquille O'Neal. With all of that together, how would you describe what Kobe's legacy will be within the game itself?
Well, he's arguably the greatest Laker of all time. People have brought up Magic Johnson. They bring up him. It's one of the two. Obviously, you appreciate the greatness of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the all-time leading scorer in NBA history, 19-time All-Star, one of the greatest centers. But he was originally in Milwaukee before he came to L.A. Magic Johnson pretty much played his whole career in a Los Angeles Laker uniform. Kobe Bryant played all 20 years of his career in a Los Angeles Laker uniform. You ask Kobe who was the greatest Laker, he'll tell you Magic. You ask Magic who was the greatest Laker of all time, he'll tell you Kobe. Just that level of respect. He's in that conversation when you consider all the great ones that have donned a Los Angeles Laker uniform. And you also have to take into account the love that he had for the Lakers. Yeah, there was some rough times after the departure of Shaquille O'Neal, and then they struggled for a couple of years. And obviously, Kobe Bryant was incredibly frustrated. Came on my radio show back in 2007, if I remember correctly, and talked about how he'd rather play on the planet Pluto than stay in a Los Angeles Laker uniform. That's the only time in the 20-year career of Kobe Bryant that he had ever spoken against being a Laker, because he was so disgruntled and disheartened by what was transpiring. Then all of a sudden they pull off a trade. They end up moving Kwame Brown and others out. They acquire Pau Gasol. They go to 3 straight NBA finals. They win back-to-back titles in 2009, 2010, and all that noise had dissipated. If there was ever a time that he was going to leave, whether it would be to be a Clipper or to be a Chicago Bull, it was going to be during that one period of time that he was upset with what was transpiring with the Los Angeles Lakers. But that was the only time that it was ever an option for him to be anything other than a Laker. He loved the purple and gold. He loved representing Laker Nation, and he loved living up to the tradition of excellence that the Los Angeles Lakers had put forth as one of the storied franchises in the history of sports. He took pride in that. He took pride in being a marquee. He took pride in being the headliner and showing up to city, state to state, and basically highlighting for everybody that he wasn't just a superstar basketball player. He was a marquee who was willing to accept the responsibility that came along with being a marquee. That means putting in the work, accepting the challenge, embracing the challenges that came along with being that dude. That's what he wanted. That's what he lived for. And that's how he went about the business of performing every single day of his career.
yeah, Kobe and the Lakers, it's hard to separate the two of them in the city of Los Angeles as well, mourning, obviously, the loss of Kobe Bryant. Stephen A. Smith sharing his thoughts and perspectives here. More from Stephen A. throughout the evening here on SportsCenter.
Hey, just the emotion and the look on your face right now as we're watching you. Just whatever you want to say. I can see you're emotional. I'm just going to give you the floor to respond and give your thoughts on the death of Kobe Bryant.
You know, we get caught up in this world in debates and who's the greatest and love to judge people and off the court and on the court decisions. I think a lot of times we forget about who people are. And I know for me, I had a defining moment in my life that he pushed me in the right direction. And for somebody who's a new father, who has a baby girl, you know, I'm not going to say prayers and condolences because I don't even know how you capture this moment, man. I know everybody's coming out with their Kobe Bryant story, and that's fine. But he is just, he was one of the most special individuals I've ever met. And it wasn't just his on-the-court performance. It was who he wanted to be, how he held himself. And we're all prone to make mistakes. We all live this life. But his innate character, his being, his spirit was incredible. It was just incredible. And it's rare that I've been around a lot of people in my life, and every time I was around him, if that was through the Players Tribune, if that was through as a player, if that was through random workouts, there's something so damn uplifting about him. It just made you want to be better in every aspect of your life because that's who he was. And that's the standard of excellence that he held himself to all the time. And today's a tough day. Today's a hard day. And I hope that everybody at home, you give that person next to you, whatever thing you have wrong in your life with them, if this might be small or big, let that shit go. It doesn't matter. I know I curse, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
None of that stuff matters, man. This is, it's about life and being precious with every damn second we have here because from somebody who knows who almost happened to me like that, man, it's just over. It's done randomly, arbitrarily. And, you know, his 4 girls and his wife, we need to come around them and support them and help them. And the NBA should cancel all games today. I don't really know what else to say.
Yeah, we should mention there are 8 games in the NBA today. It appears as though at least the Rockets-Nuggets game is going off because they did hold a moment of silence, a moment of prayer in a sense before they tipped off this afternoon to eulogize and to remember one of the greatest players that's ever picked up a basketball. I know he impacted your life personally, professionally, way beyond the game, and you can answer this from a basketball perspective or beyond. What separated Kobe Bryant from other people?
You know, so my rookie year, I only played 1 year in the league. And my rookie year, we were playing against the championship Lakers. And it's Kobe, Shaq, that squad. And I remember I was in a slump, wasn't playing well, I was getting sidetracked throughout the season, doing things I shouldn't be doing. And, you know, pumped up about playing this guy here. And I got to the Staples Center early that day, around 2 o'clock, 2:33 to shoot and get 400 made shots. And, you know, I walk in with the ball boy and I'm putting on my sneakers. And who do I see? I see Kobe Bryant working out so hard, like game-like moves. And watching him like, all right, thank you. No, that's my motivation for the day. That's great. I get a chance to work out when Kobe Bryant's working out. And I go and I do my workout, and I work out for about an hour and 15 minutes. And I go back on the sideline, I unlace my shoes, and I keep hearing the ball bounce. I look down, and this guy's still going. He's still going. And it's still the same type of moves that I saw him going from the moment I walked in the gym. And I sat there and watched him for 10 minutes, and then I left. I was like, there's no way this guy's going to be able to have enough energy to play against us tonight. And that night, he just destroyed us. He destroyed us in every facet of the game. And I remember after the whole game was over, I was like, don't be that cheesy dude. Don't ask another man, like another guy, like where that drive comes from. But I couldn't help myself. I sought him out, and I found him. I said, you know, like, why? Why'd you stay and keep working out? And this line changed my life as a person. He said, because I saw you come in the gym and I wanted you to know that no matter how hard you worked, you weren't going to outwork me. And it was one of those things where I was sitting there saying, like, who am I? Who am I? But that's just how he was, that's the cloth he was cut from. That's who he was every day in every facet of his life. You know, if it was him trying to be better, coming up with cartoons, the animated series, and winning a damn Oscar. If it was him trying to be better as a person. You know, look, I don't know every aspect about Kobe, but I know how he touched me in my life. And that moment right there was, I know my career ended short, but I carry that in everything I do. Like, that's how I attack my life. And if it's with my wife, being a better husband, if it's with my daughter, being a better dad, if it's with work, how do I work more? How do I work better? How do I work more efficiently? That's a huge part of who I am because of that moment. And I can never thank him enough for that.
Your words have been incredibly poignant. The San Antonio Spurs are going to tip off in 9 minutes. I would imagine they'll ask Greg Popovich, who's had his great duels with Kobe over the years, to talk about it after the game. As I mentioned, 8 games in the association today. The Lakers will not play.
Somebody that meant so much to all of us. And then you hear about his daughter. As a father, I've said many prayers for that family, and I'm going to continue to do so. It looked like he was the happiest he's ever been after basketball. Him and Gigi's relationship was, I mean, everybody saw it. That's all he posted about. And this was tough. I don't know how we played today. I would start thinking about the game, and then it would just snap back into my mind. We have to play tomorrow, and I'm sure Utah will do a tribute, and this pain's not going to go away anytime soon. You don't even have to be a basketball fan to feel this. You're one of the most competitive athletes, iconic athletes, and honestly, to be completely honest, more so as a father, what he's meant to that family. I'm going to pray for Vanessa and the kids, and may he rest in peace, man. This was tough.
During Kobe's 20 years in the NBA, he scored 33,643 points, 4th most in history after LeBron James passed him last night. He won 5 NBA championships. He was twice the Finals MVP, and he was also the league MVP back in 2008. And there's the scene. LA Live across the street from Staples Center tonight, which is hosting the Grammys, but still thousands of Laker fans and other Angelinos have come down to downtown to pay their respects for Kobe Bryant, who passed away earlier today in a helicopter crash outside of Los Angeles.
And on Tuesday, the Lakers will be inside the Staples Center to take on the Los Angeles Clippers, and you can only imagine the amount of emotion that's going to be coursing through that building. And maybe about 48 hours from now, Michael Wilbon joins us for a little bit of perspective. I know, Michael, you joined us a little bit earlier in our coverage, but since then, I know you talked to a lot of people around the league, and you just had an opportunity to let this marinate and digest. What are your thoughts right now?
Well, they're not much different than they were a couple of hours earlier, to tell you the truth. And Austin Rivers very eloquently expressed thoughts that a lot of us are feeling. I don't know that the thoughts are going to have that much in the way of range to them. It's something that we're not going to get over anytime soon. Austin said you don't have to be a basketball fan. You don't have to have been around the industry for years like some of us, like I have, to feel the hurt. I mean, maybe people who have certainly gotten to know him and been around him, and I was for half his life. It's hard to imagine, but remember, he was an 18-year-old in the NBA. And so that's 23 years as a grown man. And my thoughts initially aren't of basketball. They are certainly of his family and his wife and daughters, with losing a daughter as a parent. That's just so difficult to even wrap your head around. And so there's that. There are other moments and other things that come to me much more quickly. Some of them are very personal, because I have been covering the league for so long, all of Kobe Bryant's career, all of it. And one of them has to do with my own life. 12 years ago, I had a event, as they say, medically, a heart attack, and I get home from the hospital without having talked to really anybody, and there's an enormous vase of flowers at the front desk. I'm sorry, at the front desk at my home, at the front door, and they said, the note said, from Kobe Bryant. And I called the Lakers and I said, this is a joke, right? This is not from, this is somebody else. This is not from Kobe. And John Black, for so long, the director of communications with the Lakers, said, oh no, he called me to get your address, so I know it's not a joke. And at the time, Kobe's daughter was 2 years old. My son was yet to be born, and I got a lecture, a stern one, with certain words in it from Kobe about the things I better do to start taking care of my health. And we talked about children and families. And a good amount of the time that I covered the NBA and would interact with Kobe Bryant, the conversation was not necessarily about basketball. It was very early on. He knew that I had covered Michael Jordan's career a lot, most of it. And we would talk about that because that was always just sort of pushed in front of him. And Kobe was so curious about that. But as he got older, he expressed curiosity in so many other ways. I mentioned earlier how it's just his intellect. I don't want people to overlook. Yeah, you can talk about 81 points. You can talk about 5 championships. You can talk about MVPs. You can talk about all of that stuff, and it's all pertinent to some degree, but not as much as sort of the person. There was a time, I guess, late, maybe the last week of his career, and the Lakers were not going to go to the postseason. The team was falling on hard basketball times, perhaps. And Kobe had to do a lot of news conferences. He had to do a lot of goodbyes. I certainly sat with him, and we had an interview. But I knew he knew so much about language and languages. And I said to him, how many languages do you really speak? You don't let us in on stuff like that. And he said 2. English and Italian. And everybody knew about those 2. And he said, that's it. And I'm like, I don't believe you. There's more language in you. I don't believe this. And about an hour or so later, maybe, we're doing an interview. He's in the Staples Center, and there was no translator. And someone started to speak to him in Spanish. And he looked for a translator. No one was there. And he just said, oh, what the hell, and just did the interview in completely, as far as I could tell, and so were the questioners, perfect Spanish. And he was taking Mandarin lessons, I believe he told me at one point, and this is after retirement. And just the curiosity, the intellect, it went far, far, far beyond basketball. And in the last interview that I did with him, a sit-down interview, and we probably aired 3.5 minutes or so of it on ABC and the Andor Sports Center. He talked about what it is that he was interested in, what fascinated him, what consumed him. And it was the art of storytelling, which, of course, somebody who's been a journalist for a hell of a long time is really fascinated by that. And we talked about it on and off camera. We talked about it for months, but that time we talked about it on camera. For a long time, I was one of the probably a few people sort of sworn to secrecy about what he wanted to do and why he wanted to do it, and that was fine. But then he talked about it on camera, and it was fascinating. And I've looked forward to that, to him doing that further in the future. And it's difficult to imagine us without that talent, that curiosity, that intellect, that passion for knowledge and relating it. And there were so many sides to him. And you're going to hear, there are a lot of people better equipped to talk about the basketball part of this. We have a whole range of people at this network who can talk about playing with him and playing against him. And I've watched it all. I loved it all. But those things aren't the first thoughts that I've had today.
Yeah, endless drive on and off the court, as Michael has just chronicled for us, to show you how much time flies. That 2-year-old you were talking about, Natalia is now 17, and his wife Vanessa, his widow, has a 3-year-old in Bianca and a 7th-month-old in Capri. Kobe Bryant, that is her name. I mentioned this at the top here, Michael. Roughly 1 out of every 4 players in the NBA right now was born outside the United States. And if Michael Jordan and his crew in '92 brought the game to the rest of the world, Kobe and LeBron might have accentuated it, taken it to the next level for the rest of the world. With his Italian background and the way you said you covered him, never mind just Kobe Bryant as the player or as the person off the court, but the impact he had around the world is something I think that's coming into focus today. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I was in China this summer. And Kobe is still one of the most revered, if not the most revered, professional athlete. Many trips there that he made. Revered. Remember, we're talking about a development with the Dream Team. Yes, it absolutely sort of crystallized with that in the summer of 1992 in the run-up to that. And that sort of, the craze, the international basketball craze, they precipitated it, ignited it, if you will. And then so Kobe coming along 4 years later certainly became, in a lot of ways, the face of that global popularity of basketball. Not just the NBA, but basketball. And he was proud of that. I mean, that was something that he got a great kick out of for people who thought, oh, he's not going to want to sort of go back, to what we think of as a more youthful time and represent his country in the Olympics. They were wrong. And, you were looking at pictures now. And he loved it, talked about it, loved the international part of the game, talked about international players. It was great to be in the sort of the mixed zone at the Olympics. And again, hear Kobe communicating in other languages with international athletes in their languages. And you would see it, and they would just be, beside themselves. They could not believe they were having this opportunity in the midst of their international competition to talk to Kobe Bryant in this particular way. And so there's so much of that you don't necessarily see when you just look at him in a Laker uniform. It was part and parcel, and he was certainly proud of wearing that Laker uniform, but there was so much more to him.
It's such a great way you encapsulated that. Many people in the society in which we live, because we're turning over so fast and the news cycle is so quick, somebody that's normally 3-4 years out of the NBA is really not on the front burner. But to Kobe Bryant's legacy and his perspective, he is as big of a force outside of basketball after retiring as he was in his brilliant 20-year career, and gone too soon. Michael, appreciate the perspective.
Thanks for having me.
Zubin, clearly so many people around